My name is Kevin Graham. I am the president of the Fraternal Order of Police here in Chicago. I am accompanied here by my board of directors on the right and police chiefs throughout Cook County. Also present is the president of the Sergeants Association here in Chicago. We are here today. We're very grateful for the top police officials who are here with one united voice to demand the resignation of Cook County State's Attorney Kimberly Foxx.
Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx is certainly receiving a lot of backlash after her office handed down that ridiculous slap on the wrist in the Jussie Smollet case. And there's been a lot of speculation about why it is that Smollett got off so lightly. And most of that has been conspiratorial, that this was all about how the politically well-connected can get strings pulled behind the scenes, and how all that came to fruition in the Jussie Smollet case. So here's what we're going to do, folks. Rather than looking into any conspiracies or backroom deals, let's take a look at Kim Foxx's political motivations to let Smollett off so lightly. So let's take a quick look at her official profile on the Cook County's website. Here it reads, Kim took office on December 1st, 2016 with the vision of transforming the Cook County's State Attorney's Office into a fairer, more forward-thinking agency focused on rebuilding the public trust, promoting transparency, and being proactive in making all communities safe. More than 2 years into her term, Kim has undertaken substantial reform. She has revamped the office conviction integrity unit, resulting in overturned convictions in over 60 cases, including the first ever mass exoneration in Cook County for 15 men whose convictions stem from misconduct by a Chicago police officer. So you can see right away she seems to be all about getting people out of their charges rather than locking people up in jail. She has been a leader in bond reform, instructing prosecutors to agree to reconnaissance bonds where appropriate, reviewing bond decisions in cases where people are detained because they are unable to pay bonds of $1,000 or less. So again, we have another move to get people out of jail. Kim has taken the lead in prioritizing resources away from low-level offenses to focus on violent crime, including raising the threshold for approving felony charges for retail theft to $1,000 and declining to prosecute misdemeanor traffic offenses for failure to pay tickets and fines. So you can see that her term in office has been a dream for petty criminals. Thanks to Kim Cook, petty criminals can get out of jail without paying their bond. She's taken resources away from prosecuting your cases. And thanks to her, you can now steal up to $1,000 worth of stuff and not get charged with a felony. And since your crime is not a felony, your chances of getting prosecuted are little to none under her office. Under her leadership, petty criminals have free rein in Cook County, and her decision to let petty criminals off so lightly has had negative effects throughout the city.
But this is not just about Jussie Smollet. This is about many cases in the Cook County system that have gone unprosecuted or having charges reduced. The people standing around me can give you countless examples of how Ms. Foxx's lack of prosecution has cost our members and police officers throughout this country an enormous amount of problems, not to mention the fact that people in the Cook County are depending on the prosecutor to put people in jail, to charge them accordingly.
Unilateral decisions to not prosecute a number of state statutes or to alter the parameters for charging well beyond the legal requirements make appropriate prosecution of crimes including retail theft, cannabis possession, suspended and unlicensed driving all but impossible for us. These are criminal acts that our communities demand that we as the police address and hold us accountable for when we're unable to do so. The recent actions regarding the dropping of all charges against Mr. Smollett are particularly worrisome.
State's Attorney Foxx has created her own policy, gone against state law, to change just the retail theft limit in regards to a felony retail theft charge. She has created a $1,000 limit, which is 3 times higher than the state law, and she's expecting 10 convictions out of that person before she will approve a felony charge of retail theft. I ask you, those are familiar with the Cook County court system, do you realize how many times a subject would have to be arrested before they actually got 10 convictions? So in essence, what she's doing is working the charge of retail theft out of the law where someone will probably never ever get charged with that crime. And what she's doing is she's enabling the offenders. The bad guys are not being held accountable. And State's Attorney Foxx's policies and her decisions are hurting and harming not only the citizens of Cook County, but it's an officer safety issue with the police officers here in Cook County. So today we're here to ask State's Attorney Foxx to do the right thing, to step down and resign from her position. Thank you.
To me, this isn't about Jussie. This is about catch and release. We have so much stuff coming into Berwyn, and they get arrested, and a week later, they're back in Berwyn or Oak Park. I also support the police, and I support Trump. Not that that's a big deal, but this is about catch and release to us. The suburban Cook County is going to vote her out. That I guarantee you. We are pissed. We're pissed. North Riverside Mall every weekend. People come from Chicago. They're busting up the mall. The mall gets shut down. And then the next weekend they're there because they just throw them out. That's what we're upset about. This Jussie stuff, I really, it's wrong, but it brought it to a light.
And if you think her policies of allowing petty criminals free rein in Chicago is not bad enough, wait till we get into her racial politics. Here, continuing reading her official profile. Prior to being elected state attorney, Kim served as chief of staff for the Cook County Board President, where she was the lead architect of the county's criminal justice reform agenda to address racial disparities in the criminal and juvenile justice systems. Okay, let's look a little further into what she means by racial disparities in the criminal justice system. Here's a quote from her during an interview when she was running for state's attorney. I am deeply concerned about the gross disparity of Cook County Jail's population. 86% of Cook County's inmates are black and Latino, despite only representing 50% of the county's population. This concern is one of the main reasons I am running for state's attorney, and I would change almost everything about how the office operates in order to address this problem and correct this injustice. So here she's complaining about 86% of the people in jail being people of color, despite being only 50% of the population, and she's calling this an injustice. So she's calling this an injustice despite the perfectly valid explanation as to why so many people of color are in jail, and that is that a larger proportion of the crime is committed by people of color. I'll spare everyone citing the overwhelming statistics and evidence that this is indeed the case. Now, she claims she wants to do something about that disparity. Well, there's really only two things you can do. One, you can get people of color to commit less crimes, and if you do that, the whole world will applaud you. But another more shady way you can keep less minorities out of prison is you can twist the laws, cook the books, discriminate in favor of minorities in cases, and enact special rules that favor minorities. And if you look at Foxx's record and the fact that she considers that disparity an injustice, that proves that she's taking the underhanded route in addressing that disparity. Another one of Foxx's key issues she advocates for is being against the so-called school-to-prison pipeline.
The school-to-prison pipeline. It's a term that describes how American kids get pushed out of public schools and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. Basically, harsh zero-tolerance policies in schools have led to more suspensions, expulsions, and even in-school arrests. Getting suspended or expelled means more time away from school, and it doesn't take an honor student to figure out that's bad news.
And whenever this school-to-prison pipeline is brought up by the left, the aspect of the school-to-prison pipeline that they most harp on is the fact that it disproportionately affects minorities.
Students of color and those with disabilities are disproportionately affected. Black students get expelled 3 times more than their white classmates.
So you can see the school-to-prison pipeline issue is the same as the disparity issue. So you end up with the same 2 simple options as before to solve the problem. You can either make the kids behave better, or you can let them off and neglect to prosecute. And I think we all know Foxx's MO on this. Her candidate profile back in 2016 reads, I am committed to disrupting the school-to-prison pipeline by working with stakeholders to stop the use of the juvenile justice system to deal with school discipline issues. So you can see her remedy for school to prison pipeline is to not convict the criminal offenders. And guys, I don't want you to think that she's completely impotent as a prosecutor. I think we found her prosecutor fire. Here's a quote from Foxx as a candidate back in 2016. She suggests she would deal with officer misconduct more aggressively too. DNA Info Chicago recently reported that 80% of CPD squad car dash cams and other recorders, quote, have not been activated or were intentionally defeated by police personnel, leaving the department without potential evidence for some cases. Foxx appears incredulous that Alvarez has not brought charges against those officers. So you can see, folks, it looks like we found some nonviolent offenders that Foxx likes to sink her big fat buck teeth into. So it's no wonder the relationship between her and local police departments is shit. So it's perfectly understandable why these officers are pissed off at her. Okay, here's a quote I found fascinating. Foxx rejects myopic law and order lock-em-up policies. She favors a different kind of justice. Holistic reforms that will divert nonviolent offenders to services that will keep them out of the system. So, instead of telling nonviolent offenders, get your ass out there and give us 200 hours of community service to keep your ass out of the system, we're going to give them services. There's really just endless quotes of her spewing her racial and progressive politics and her policies that if you're not a violent criminal, you're just pretty much free to go. Okay, folks, now we're going to do a little thought experiment. Knowing everything we know about Kim Foxx, let's go back in time to the day Jussie Smollet got arrested. Knowing what you know about her now, what would you predict would be the outcome in his case? I think the answer to that is pretty crystal clear. Kimberly Foxx, racially, politically motivated to a point where she's completely ineffective as a state's attorney.
This case was treated like the other cases that have gone through our alternative prosecution model. He was given the same opportunity that thousands of others with the same level of offense and the same criminal background have had.
Bullshit.